in this lecture, we're going to be talk about what are the categories of solar vendors are there whenever we are going for empanelment. Now, why we require the empanelment? The reason is that as per the guidelines of MNRE, which is a Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, whosoever consumer want to install the solar power plant and if they want to take the subsidy from the MNRE, then they have to install the solar power plant through the empaneled vendor, because the empaneled vendor follows the guidelines of the MNRE, which says that we have to use the DCR panel, domestic content requirement panels, a specific inverters, and the structure as per decided by the MNRE. That is why the MNRE has decentralized their power to the respective state discoms. Now, every state is having the discoms. Like in Maharashtra, we have MSEDCL. In Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, their own electricity distribution companies are there. So now we have to register for these particular companies for the empanelment. Now, this particular companies or respective state discoms, they are floating the tenders in the market. So basically, in the last month, let's say in Maharashtra, we have float of 25 megawatt of an tender. So any person wants to be involved or works to be into this particular tender, they have to be empaneled themselves to be a part of this particular tender. Now, in the most of the tender for every state, what the state is floating but through the discom companies, so they have a specific categories for the empanelment. Now, the first category of empanelment is for the experienced solar vendors. So, who those solar installers are installing the solar power plant, they are called as a solar vendors. Now, the solar installer, if it is they have an experience of more than 100 kilowatt, they are said to be as an experienced solar vendor, and they can take the work through the tender mechanism. In terms of an megawatt also they can take, 500 kilowatt also they can take as per their requirement. So the first category decided by the MSEDCL tender last time, which was float for 25 megawatt. Every state is floating this particular tender, and the same parameter will be there whenever we read out these particular tenders. Now, through the tender mechanism, if I want to be do the empanelment for the particular discom, the category A says that these are the experienced vendor, and under that, the vendor should have the 100 kilowatt size of an installation experience, whether it is a residential or whether it is a commercial type of an project. Second thing is that whosoever experienced vendor are trying to do the empanelment through a particular tender mechanism, they have to show their annual turnover also. Like in the last 25 megawatt of an tender floated by the MSEDCL, they have given this particular parameter. Like every state, DISCOM is floating the tender, and moreover the same parameter will be there inside the particular tenders. Now, the annual turnover which was been required to show by the experienced vendor are the 50 lakh rupees per year. For the last 3-year turnover document will have to be submit to this particular mechanism. Then the registration fee for participation under the empanelment through the tender we have to give, which is a 5,900 rupees are there. Every state discom where they are floating this particular tender, so moreover the same registration fee will be applicable for this particular participation under the empanelment. Next is the earnest money deposit also we have to be give, which is the 5 lakh rupees for the 6 months. So the serious solar vendors are only able to participate into the tender. That was a motive behind keeping the earnest money deposit, which is a 5 lakh rupees for the 6 month. After 6 months, the solar vendor is getting this particular 5 lakh rupees back whenever they have filled this particular parameter and they have start working under the tender mechanism. Next is the performance bank guarantee we have to be give. So let's say this performance bank guarantee is applicable for the 5 years of an span, like a 78 months. This particular performance bank guarantee we have to be due into the bank in the name of the particular discom who is floating the tender for this particular mechanism. So like that, the 10% of the overall system cost we have to be give. Moreover, all the discom whenever they are floating one tender and they are asking for the empanelment, So moreover, the same percentage of a bank guarantee we have to be make in our bank in the name of the respective discoms and their head office. Next is the whosoever vendor are participating in the empanelment, they have to follow some specifications given by the MNRE. So MNRE, they are keeping one parameter basically here, so that whosoever consumer wants to install the solar power plant, they should get the best quality of the solar power plant installation should be done on their particular rooftop. So that is why the focus has been given towards the solar power plant, solar panel who are manufactured in the India itself. And this is called as the DCR solar panel. The MNRE has been given one list which is enlisting whosoever manufacturer are manufacturing the solar panel in the India, and these panels are said to be a domestic content requirement solar panels. Next is the BIS certified solar inverter we have to be used if we are empaneled a vendor and installing the solar power plant for the consumer. And in other accessories like the mounting structure, the minimum clearance should be required as a 300 mm, and maximum there is a discussion should be within the consumer and the installer, and then they can give the quotation for this particular solar power plant installation. So these are some standard guidelines has been given by the MNRE, so that whatever the BOS material will be there for the solar power plant installation, it has been some through the guideline has been given for that. And like that, the empaneled vendor for this tender, they have to follow this particular guideline. Next is that the payment from the consumer, basically the subsidy parameter comes over here. Now in earlier, when we talk about the policy before 30 of July 2022, so in that case, the consumer has to give the payment to the solar installer by deducting the subsidy. And the subsidy is transferred on the solar installer's account by the MNRE or the Central Financial Assistant. But the recently policy has been changed by the Indian government, and now the consumer has to pay the whole amount of the money to this particular solar vendor, including the subsidy also and the other BOS material prices also. So, and after the solar power plant has been installed completely, thereafter the Central Finance Assistant by the MNRE, they are crediting this subsidy on the consumer's account. So this change has been happened in the year of 2022. The experienced vendor, they have to follow the benchmark cost. MNRE is setting the benchmark prices for each year, that is a minimum price for installation of the solar power plant. Like for the 1 kilowatt, the last year benchmark for price for 21-22, it was 43,000 rupees. So like that, every year MNRE is giving some benchmark price for the awareness of the consumer. So consumer can see this particular benchmark price, and according to that, he can deal with the solar vendors or the installer for installing the solar power plant in his rooftop area. The next thing is that the first preference will be given for the category A consumer, because they are the experienced consumer. Whenever the solar installers or the consumers basically, they are filling the online form for the installation of an solar project, so automatically the solar vendor, they are choosing on the particular website. And from that, the particular solar vendor is getting the order or the message that this much consumer in your area has selected you. So like the first preference will be given for such kind of an vendors. So this vendor don't have to search for their order or for the installation of an project, but through the website, the consumers are selecting to this particular experienced vendor. So that kind of a benefit the vendors are getting when they are the empaneled experienced vendor through this particular tender mechanism. The next parameter we're going to be see over here is the category B type of an vendors. So whosoever vendors are the new entrepreneur and has a new agency they have settled in the corresponding area of an discom. Like in Uttar Pradesh, they have selected this particular district. Like in Madhya Pradesh, they have selected the Indore district. So like that, every state will have their individual discom, and some area we have to be select where we have to be installed the solar power plants. So now such kind of a new entrepreneur are also being promoted by the MNRE by giving the clause of category B whenever any discom is floating the tender under the rooftop scheme floated by the MNRE. Now in this, whosoever new entrepreneurs are there, they have to pay the registration fee of 5,900 rupees. Moreover, this fee might be get changed depends upon the discoms or the local discoms or the corresponding state discoms. But this fee will be near about this much prices only as per their discoms. Then the new entrepreneur or the new agency has to give the earnest money deposit for the 6 months of an span, which is the 3 lakh rupees. That is of EMD they have to be make. And after the 6 months, they are getting back this particular EMD. Then the annual turnover also we don't require to be show, as this particular entrepreneur are the new entrepreneur. So that is why they don't have the experience for installation for the last 3 years. And that is why the annual turnover parameter, it is not required for category B under the tender mechanism. Then they have to give the performance bank guarantee. So they have to be visit their bank and they have to be make the performance bank guarantee. And the price of this bank guarantee is a 10% of the total system cost. Let's say the new entrepreneur wants to install up to 50 kilowatt of an project through this particular tender mechanism. So whatever the price of 50 kilowatt, 10% of this particular 50 kilowatt of price, whatever the money is coming, that much bank guarantee we have to be give in the name of the local discom who is floating this particular tender. This is also applicable for the 78 months of an span. And after the 78 months, that is a 5 years, the vendor is getting returned back this particular PVG. So basically the motive of keeping the PVG is that if any solar installer has installed the solar project but unable to fulfill the requirements of an MNRE in terms of an performance ratio, which is required the 75% or 0.75 factor. So if it is going lesser than that, then if the consumer is complaining for the particular solar agency or the vendors, then the MNRE has a right or the local discom has a right to encash this performance bank guarantee as a punishment for the particular vendor. So like that, it is a main motive is that whatever the solar installations will going to be happen in the territory of an MSEDCL or any discom, this should be in the proper quality, installation should be done. That was a main motive for getting this particular PBG in the name of local discoms for the 5 years of a span. Then this particular new entrepreneur also have to be stick towards the guidelines and specifications adhered by the MNRE, like the panels. These are the domestic content requirement, indigenously manufactured solar panel they have to use, BIS certified solar inverter they have to use, minimum clearance of the particular mounting structure should be 300 mm, and the DC wire length will be 30 meter under the benchmark price set by the MNRE. Then the subsidy also, as per the parameter that we have discussed in the earlier slide, the subsidy parameter earlier July 2022 and before 2022 has been changed as per the said words. Thereafter, this new entrepreneur and the new agency also has to follow the benchmark cost settled by the MNRE. Then the first preference also will be given for the new entrepreneur under the category B under the tender mechanism, and 5% of the allocated capacity will be given for the new entrepreneur. So most of the focus is given towards the experienced vendor because they have the experience and they can do a more amount of an work. So more category and weightage has been given to category A, and lesser weightage has been given for the category B, which is a 5% of the allocated capacity of the overall price of a tender or overall capacity of a tender. Similarly, the new entrepreneur and the new agency is getting the order on the respective discom portal whenever consumer feels that he wants to install the solar project in the territory. So he has the right to select the any solar entrepreneur who is empaneled under this particular website, and they have to select that particular vendor. So like that, the first preference and the order is also getting by this new entrepreneur and the agencies by the consumer directly through the respective discom portal.